In part 4, we ended things with John Brzenk's pivotal victory over Devon Larratt at the 2015 WAL Championships. In this video, we entered the twilight years of John's career, culminating in what is perhaps not only the most unlikely comeback in arm wrestling history, but indeed in all of professional sports. This is the fifth and final video of a multi-part series on John Brzenk, so if you want to follow along with the entire thing, and many more series like it, make sure to subscribe to the Arm Historian. When John Brzenk defeated Devon Larratt in 2015, it wasn't treated as the beginning of something new. It was understood almost universally as the closing of a chapter that had already gone on longer than anyone expected. By this point, Brzenk had already lived several arm wrestling careers in one lifetime, and had gained recognition of still being capable of operating at the highest level, even in a sport that no longer resembled the one he had helped build in the first place. What followed instead was something far more unusual. A decade where John Brzenk remained relevant, but without ever again being the center of the sport, taking several steps back from the limelight. The years immediately following 2015 marked a clear shift in how John Brzenk approached arm wrestling. He no longer chased full tournament schedules, nor did he attempt to stay constantly active against every rising contender. His appearances became selective, deliberate, and often tied to a specific matchup rather than focused on titles. However, this doesn't mean he no longer chased prestigious tournament titles, as shortly after his WAL Championship title, John would enter the 2015 A1 Russian Open tournament. At this event, he battled his way through the top Eastern pullers, as well as some standout Western contenders, all the way to the Open Right-Hand Finals. Here, he would come up against one of the top arm wrestlers of the time, Andrei Pushkar. John ended up losing the finals without standing much of a chance against the Ukrainian powerhouse. Despite this result, John had proved he was still a massive favorite in almost any arm wrestling match, seeing as he had also beaten the lighter but still formidable Kadzimurat Zoloev in convincing fashion earlier in the tournament. Physically though, the cost to John's body was becoming harder to ignore. Injuries accumulated and recovery took longer in general, resulting in a rather quiet year for the GOAT in 2016, especially for his standards. He was, however, convinced to compete on the right arm at a special event super match in June of that year against a familiar face in the Japanese Yoshinobu Kanai. At a special event in the city of Sendai, the Japanese open top roller proved to be too much for the aging Brzenk, and John faced defeat in the best of 3 super match. Even though this was only meant to be an exhibition match of sorts, and Kanai was certainly not to be underestimated as an arm wrestler, it was clear the cracks were starting to show for the American. After this, John was still around the arm wrestling scene, often showing up at afterpulls and even helping to organize and attaching his name to a tournament, but was no longer consistently competing on a professional level. It seemed like his injuries were getting the better of him, and it had become clear by now that the then arguably biggest arm wrestling promotion, the WAL, was running out its course. Apart from a few run-ins with Travis Bagent, one of which being a super match at the Moldova Open in 2018, a match which John convincingly lost, not a lot was happening for Brzenk. That was until he was approached by the dawn of Eastern arm wrestling, Igor Mazurenko, with an enticing offer. If you want to learn more about the history of Igor, Eastern arm wrestling and the PAL, make sure to check out my in-depth video on the topic. Mazurenko was organizing quite the event, with the promise of a multi-tiered supermatch showdown between 8 of the best arm wrestlers in the world, aptly named the Top 8. However lofty the goal had to look from the outside, John, in his usual demure way, was carefully happy to join the event and get back into arm wrestling.
Right, I was really worried that I wasn't going to be able to lose that kind of weight, 30 pounds at my age. So right after Igor proposed top 8 to me, and I told him, yeah, I would consider doing it, but I really didn't know if it's even possible. Not because of the training, but just because of the weight. So I wasn't really testing myself against really top tier guys. But yeah, no, the first couple 3 weeks is tough. I mean, even really the first week, 3-4 days is the toughest part. Getting your body not used to having any carbs. I was definitely had the keto flu and just didn't feel like doing much of anything. But
A lot of people within the community had come to accept that John Brzenk, the once perfect Storm, laid down his arm after his undeniable victory against Devon Larratt in 2015. This looked to be the perfect cherry to top off what many would think of as the perfect career. Now with John coming back at such a level, everyone was waiting with bated breath to see the legend do his thing once again and show everyone that at nearly 60 years old, he could still hang with the best of the sport. Unfortunately though, a little known thing as a global pandemic had different plans. The top 8 was officially postponed, but guaranteed by its press team to continue at a later date. The entire world went into lockdown, and as a result, all tournaments and arm wrestling events had halted. And by the end of the decade, John once again stepped away from competition.
What's going on, man?
Nothing new. Just retired. Like being retired. In the sport of arm wrestling, anyway.
You do? You like it?
No, I still like to dabble in it a little bit. I realize every time I do, though, that I'm washed up. Yeah, I made a promise to Igor that I was going to pull in the top 8, which was silly because I'm not. My heart's not in it. My head's not in it. My shoulder's not in it. So.
This time, it really looked to be the end of the storied career of John Brzenk. Of course, he couldn't bid farewell to arm wrestling completely. He made some appearances online every now and then, and it seems like he was at least tangentially aware of the goings-on in the greater arm wrestling scene. COVID had halted almost all competitive tournaments, that much was true, but with that also came a revival of people discovering the sport through social media. In fact, by the time the restrictions around the pandemic started loosening up again, arm wrestling seemed to be more popular than ever before. Of course, this also meant that soon, some of the new young blood in the sport wanted to experience the perfect Storm firsthand. Chan Shaw was an up-and-coming super heavyweight in North America at the time and was hailed by many as one of the futures of local arm wrestling. He first contacted John in early 2021 with the proposal to return to the arm wrestling table in the form of a super match versus Chance himself. Although tentative at first, Brzenk eventually relented and agreed to the match with his young countryman. Although first, he wanted to shake off the arm rust and try his luck at a more intimate, less high-stakes setting. In order to accomplish this, he would enter the Rumble at the Rainbow 2 tournament, a mere 2 weeks before his big match with Chance was set to happen. The tournament didn't exactly feature the best of the best, but there was some serious ranked contenders present. John, on his end, absolutely demolished the heavyweight as well as the open weight class on the right arm. Although looking a tiny bit shaky at times and seemingly somewhat unsure of himself, you could see his self-confidence improve after every one-sided win. He even entered the tournament on the left arm as well, a rarity nowadays. And although he didn't outright win several classes there, he still did well overall even on that arm. Content that his power and skills had not dissipated quite yet, John faced Chan Shaw on the table by the end of July 2021. Although Chance proved to be faster off the go than John nearly every time, and he was certainly close in strength, John ended up winning the super match 3-1, mainly because of superior skill and endurance. To a lot of people who were new to the sport, this was their first time seeing John Brzenk in action, and it's safe to say he did not disappoint. With the standard now set yet again, John's comeback was in full swing, and other proverbial arm sharks were circling the waters, all wanting a piece of the legend himself. Dimitri Kachan was another up-and-coming local arm wrestler who tested himself against John, this time in a special best-of-3 super match at the Texas State Arm Wrestling Championships. Despite Kachan's aggressive hits and power, John's tenacity and patience ended up affording him another hard-fought victory. A mere 20 days later, this time at the Virginia State Championships, another contender presented himself to John in the form of Paul Lynn. This right arm super match was put on by none other than Travis Bajent and was shaping up to be John's most difficult challenge of his recent comeback. However, Lynn ended up being no match for the GOAT, and John relatively convincingly took the super match 3-0, holding off Lynn's surges and powering through them each time. This could no longer be called a fluke. Brzenk's shape seemed to have returned in quick fashion, and despite what many realized, the best was yet to come. In the post-corona era, several new big arm wrestling events were looking to capitalize on the newfound popularity of the sport, one of them being East vs West. Of course, for one of their first big super match events, they wanted to host John Brzenk as well. Before that could happen though, Brzenk went on to win his namesake event, the John Brzenk Cup, by the end of 2021, and took first place there in the super and overall right arm category. Another fledgling promotion was King of the Table, where Brzenk would battle his longtime nemesis Devon Larratt. In the lead up to the match, the majority of onlookers thought Brzenk would have no chance this time, despite him getting the better of Larratt more often than not during the past decades. Even though Brzenk came out strong in the first round, Devon's relative youth, at least compared to John Brzenk, endurance and power ended up being too much, and John took his first big loss during his comeback. At East vs West 2 in Istanbul, John would be facing a familiar face in the veteran, Kazimurad Zoloev. Even though Zoloev once again gave everything he had, John's superior hand control, combined with his tenacious top roll, still proved too much for him, resulting in another 3-0 in Brzenk's favor. After yet another blowout victory in an exhibition match versus Engin Terzi, this time at the Hardanger Open, John took yet another win against the powerhouse Pavlo Derbedyev at the Kentucky Muscle Tournament. Now continuing with his comeback in 2022, he emerged victorious yet again at East vs West 3 in a close, hard-fought match versus Zurab Taburidze, and a similar 3-2 match win versus the large Corey West at Michael Todd's Monster Factory. By this time it was crystal clear John Brzenk was back and dominating consistently, much like he did before, even when faced with some of the top talent of the day. At East vs West 4, the Kazakhstani superstar Kirdugali Ongerbayev was looking to undermine Brzenk's recent ascendancy, and he would have a good shot at it, seeing as John came in feeling a bit under the weather. A scruffy-looking John, obviously still sick, gave the young technical monster a serious run for his money, but ended up losing that best-of-5 right-handed super match 1-3. To top off 2022 at the next edition of East vs West, Oleg Petrenko, a young Ukrainian athlete, was another speed bump, but a more manageable one. Brzenk ended up winning that match 3-0, and with that showed he was still competitive in bouts of endurance and technique. In 2023, Brzenk remained active in East vs West as well as King of the Table events. At East vs West 6, he narrowly lost 2-3 to the Georgian Irakli Sirakashvili, making the match unbelievably close. Later on at King of the Table 6 in Dubai, he faced longtime rival and fellow legend Denis Siplenkov, the monster from the East, and ended up being defeated 0-6 in a match where Siplenkov too showed he was still in formidable shape. Brzenk also ended up losing 0-4 to Todd Hutchings at an AWC Fight Night event in Canada, another match built as an all-legends matchup, and that's certainly what it was. Later on in 2023, at East vs West 10, now November, Brzenk lost to Sasho Andreev. Notably afterwards, he rebounded from this string of losses at King of the Table 8 in Dubai by upsetting former Olympic champion and fellow legend of the sport, Alexei Voivoda, this time 4-2. Although not quite as an unblemished record as in the earlier years of his latest comeback, John clearly could still hold his own on the table. After several years of competing once again at the highest level of arm wrestling, the sport was yet again taking its toll on John's aging body. At the start of 2024, Krasimir Kostadinov was one of the athletes that showed John he couldn't just plow through everybody anymore, as he expertly dismantled the GOAT 3-0 at East vs West 11. Later in the summer of that same year, this time in the US, an upcoming social media star and promising arm wrestler, Leonidas Arcona, tried his luck facing John, but didn't end up coming out on top, proving that technical proficiency plus decades of experience would still win out over raw power and undeveloped talent. Finally, now arriving in early 2025, Brzenk was coaxed to show up one more time at East vs West. This time at its 17th edition, with another longtime arm wrestler working on his own comeback. Longtime rival Japanese Yoshinobu Kanai was respectful, of course, but showed Brzenk that he had outgrown the grizzled American by beating him 3-0 in their match. Throughout his post-2020 comeback, Brzenk's longevity and perspective drew widespread admiration. He often spoke of embracing defeats as part of aging gracefully in the sport. John Brzenk officially announced his retirement from the sport yet again and talked about impending back surgery and other physical impediments as some of the reasons for taking a step back. However you slice it though, his comeback had been a successful one and showed that even at such an advanced age and the major toll his career had taken on his body, the perfect storm could still rage on when called to the table. John Brzenk's career doesn't end the way most stories do. There is no single loss that defines his exit. No moment where the sport clearly moves past him. In fact, there are several moments where John Brzenk seemingly caught up right to where he left off last. And that is what makes it difficult to summarize what is in many ways a completely unique story, not only in arm wrestling, but in sports history as a whole. John didn't only dominate his own era in the sport, he connected several eras to his consistent dominance. When John won, it confirmed what experience could still achieve. When he lost, it legitimized those who came after him. Very few athletes remain relevant long enough to become history while they're still active. Even fewer do it without losing the respect of the sport along the way. In contrast to other legends of arm wrestling, people never truly discuss who is the best to ever put his arm on a table. Everyone agrees. It's John. And when he finally did step away, he didn't just leave a vacuum. He left a standard, one that arm wrestling will continue to measure itself against, long after his last match.
You are our arm wrestling hero. You're the best of us. You're the best to ever do it. And we absolutely love you, mate.
Thank you for watching, and a special shout out to all the Armians and Finger folk. Arm Historian, out.